Thank you, Madam Speaker. Canadians are tired of watching the same headlines play out every week. Another violent crime committed by someone who never should have been released in the first place. They see the revolving door of justice spinning faster than ever, and they have the right to ask why their safety no longer seems to matter. That's why we're here today, to debate Bill C-14, the government's latest attempt to clean up the mess that it created years ago through soft-on-crime policies. Madam Speaker, let's not forget how we got here. In 2019, the Liberals passed Bill C-75, which enshrined in law the principle of restraint. It directed police and judges to release offenders at the earliest reasonable opportunity under the least onerous conditions. That single change, that Liberal ideology, opened the floodgates to catch-and-release system that we now have, and it's in our justice system. Then came Bill C-5, which gutted mandatory minimum sentences and made house arrest available for serious crimes like sexual assault and drug trafficking. When crime inevitably spiked, the government tried to paper over this damage with Bill C-48, a bill they sold as tough on bail. But it barely scratched the surface, a handful of new reverse onus offences, and no real change to the culture of automatic release. The result has been devastating. Since 2015, violent crime is up 55%, firearm crime up 130%, extortion up 330%, sexual assaults up 76%, and homicides up 29%. Those are not just numbers. Each one represents a victim, a family, a community that has been forever changed. Let us not forget the names behind those statistics. Bailey McCourt, murdered by her ex-husband just hours after he was released on bail for assaulting her. Savannah Cullah, a 29-year-old mother of 4, gunned down in Brampton by a man who had already been released on bail.
Shame.
These tragedies are not anomalies. They are the predictable outcome of policies that put ideology ahead of safety. Now, after a decade of denial, the Liberals have introduced Bill C-14. It admits, finally, that their reforms have failed. The bill tweaks the criminal code to clarify that restraint does not require release when detention is necessary to protect the public. It adds a few more reverse onus offences, such as violent auto theft, break and enter, and human trafficking, and it slightly tightens conditional sentences for youth custody rules. Conservatives, well, we welcome any movement in the right direction, but let's be clear, Bill C-14 is not the bold reform Canadians deserve. This bill keeps the principle of restraint that caused the crisis in the first place. It does not restore mandatory minimum sentences that were stripped away in Bill C-5. It does not presume detention for repeat violent offenders. It simply shifts the burden of proof. It still allows house arrest for robbery, trafficking, and firearm crimes. And its so-called guidance to judges remains optional, not mandatory. Canadians don't want more guidance. They want guarantees that violent, repeat criminals will not be back on the streets to terrorize their communities. Our Conservative plan, our Jail Not Bail Act, brought forward by my colleague from Oxford, would deliver those guarantees. It would replace the principle of restraint with a public safety primary clause, making the safety of the public in our communities the governing principle in bail. It would presume detention, not release, for serious violent crimes such as sexual assault, human trafficking, armed robbery, and home invasion. It would restore mandatory minimums for firearms, sexual assault, kidnapping, and other serious offences. It would ban house arrest for robbery, gun, and trafficking crimes. It would require judges to consider every prior conviction, outstanding charge, and pattern of offending while on bail. It would bar criminal sureties and enforce surety obligations so that bail means accountability, not just paperwork. And it would raise the risk threshold from substantial likelihood to reasonably foreseeable. Because if it is reasonably foreseeable that someone will reoffend, they shouldn't be released. The Liberals call Bill C-14 a comprehensive reform. I call it an admission of guilt, an admission that the Conservative warnings were right all along. They copied our ideas because the evidence left them no choice. They copied them only halfway because political optics still matter more to them than public safety. They talk about compassion for victims, but every piece of legislation they've passed since 2015 has sided with offenders. You cannot be pro-victim and pro-offender at the same time. Madam Speaker, communities across my riding of Souris Moose Mountain know this reality all too well. People used to leave their doors unlocked. Now they lock their vehicles, barns, and shops every night. Farmers are losing quads or trucks to organized theft rings. Small business owners are watching thieves walk in, clean out the shelves, and walk out, only to see those same offenders released the next day. And the numbers tell the story clearly. In Souris Moose Mountain, violent crimes increased from about 3,500 incidents in 2015 to nearly 4,700 incidents in 2024, a staggering 34% jump. This is not an abstract statistic. That is hundreds of real families in our rural communities who have been victimized, who have lost their sense of safety, and who are asking, when will the system finally put law-abiding citizens first? Every time an offender is released without consequence, confidence in the justice system erodes a little bit more. That's why our message is simple: scrap liberal bail. Canadians deserve more than half measures. They deserve to live without fear in their homes and on their farms, their shops and in their streets. They deserve a justice system that puts their safety first, not the comfort of repeat offenders. This government has had 10 years to get it right, but instead it has chosen ideology over evidence, leniency over law, and rhetoric over results. Conservatives will support sending Bill C-14 to committee, but we will fight for real amendments to eliminate the principle of restraint entirely, to presume detention for major and repeat violent offences, to restore mandatory minimums, and to turn judicial suggestions into judicial obligations. Only then can we begin to undo the damage caused by Bill C-75 and Bill C-5. Canadians have lost faith in their justice system, and they have every right to. We owe it to victims like Bailey McCourt and Savannah Cullah, and to every Canadian who wonders whether their government still values their safety, to make this right. The government position is clear. Public safety comes first. Or the Conservative position is clear. Public safety comes first. Justice means accountability, and no violent repeat offender should walk free while innocent Canadians live in fear. That is why we will continue to press this government to strengthen Bill C-14 or step aside and let Conservatives fix the system for good. Because Canadians don't want tougher laws, they want safer communities. And only a Conservative government will deliver both. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, the Government House Leader.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. That's where the member is wrong. I believe that what we have seen is a Prime Minister that is committed to make our communities safer, and we've seen that through the demonstration of the two ministers charged with bringing forward the bail reform legislation that we're debating today. This isn't something in which came up overnight. This is something in which dealt with a great deal of consultation, working with the different stakeholders. Our judicial system is a shared responsibility. We work with provinces, territories, Indigenous communities, Canadians as a whole, and I believe we've delivered first-class legislation that will assist in making our communities safer. And that, when I say assist, because it also involves provinces and municipalities, law enforcement and stakeholders also to come to the table. I'm pleased that the member indicated that he supports the legislation to go to committee. That's relieving to hear that. The question I have for him specific is, does he share the same ambition that I have in delivering bail reform legislation, a law, before the end of the year? Would he not agree that that is a goal that we should strive to achieve?
For Souris Moose Mountain.
I agree with the member's assessment, but I agree we should have it law with amendments, with Conservative amendments. And I came from the business world, and in the business world we manage our budgets and we manage our companies by results. And I just wanted to take a look at some of the results that have been in his home city of Winnipeg since this liberal bail laws were put in place. And I just think here there's a violent shooting, carjacking, 24 previous violent offenses out on probation, murder while on bail, 16 arrests, 9 violent convictions, 15 breaches, fatal stabbing, out on bail, 11 previous convictions, possessions for firearms. I can go on and on this list. The results speak for themselves. We need laws that protect our citizens, that put our victims first, not the offenders.
Questions et commentaires.
Questions and comments. The honourable member for Rimouski-La-Matapedia. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to underscore a historic moment in the history of Quebec. Not too long ago, they said yes to the country of Quebec, to liberty and pride and courage. This same conviction still remains very strong for people from Quebec. We want to be masters of our destiny because Quebec independence is a logical follow-up to our history, our language, our identity, and even our existence. My question to my colleague is, the Conservative Party wanted to try to reform and improve some aspects of security, but at the same time, it wanted to attack a fundamental principle, the presumption of innocence. Can my colleague explain the logic of a fundamental need and right of a society and what she's proposing with this bill tabled by the government?
The honourable member for Surrey Moose Mountain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Although I fundamentally disagree with the premise of that question, I will comment on the fact that we're not talking about first-time offenses here. We're talking about repeat offenders who have committed violent crimes over and over again. When he talks about presumption of innocence should be, people make mistakes. We have compassion. We all believe that everyone should have a fair trial, a fair crack at the judicial system. But when it's been abused over and over and over again by repeat criminals committing violent offenses, I think that our whole system needs to be looked at again, and that's why the Conservative Jail Not Bail Act addresses these very issues that he's talking about.
Questions and comments, the honourable member for Nunavut.
The John Howard Society recently called for making stronger and expanding Ontario's bail system. They have a 96% success rate in ensuring bail conditions are met. And I wonder if the member agrees that community-based supervision programs like the 17 programs across Canada that work should be expanded.
For Surrey Moose Mountain.
Like I mentioned previously in my other answer, Madam Speaker, that I'm a very results-based person. And if something is proven to work, I'm sure that Conservatives would be very happy to take a look at it and to work with it. I could refer to my colleagues, the Shadow Minister for Justice or the member from York Centre, who have a lot more experience in this field than I do. But I know that we're compassionate and we want the best for Canada. And if there is ways that we can make that happen by working with other parties, we will do that.